with Land in Our Names, we have this working definition of reparations, and a lot of it is linked to this idea of repair, about healing, about addressing the harm that has happened as a result of colonialism or extractivism, exploitation of resources, whether they are human beings who are like seen as property or things like minerals. And so like when I think of reparations, it's intrinsically tied to ecological action, whether that's about like, you know, rebalancing ecosystems, or about the fact that the wealthiest countries of the world are the ones who are using the most resources, energy, and consuming the most fossil fuels. But the people who are on the front lines, the people who are being harmed, are the poorest people, the people who are in like countries that were colonized, that were victims of imperialism, but they're the ones who are facing climate catastrophe. So when I think about ecological reparations as a term, to me, it's like it goes hand in hand with the idea of reparations, whether that's reparations for countries like Haiti or like other countries which were used as places for enslaved workers to produce products for like the consuming home countries. And so to me, they're intrinsically tied, like you can't separate one from the other. Land in Our Names is a collective of Black and people of color, and we are an anti-racist land justice collective using a reparative justice framework to achieve like land reparations and increase access and support for like Black and people of color to land and to nature and to farming and so on. So recently we have been doing a micro grant giving thing called the Growers Grants for Black and people of color, which we're giving grants as small as like £100 to as large as £1,000 to people who want to get into growing, or people who already do it as a hobby, or people who want to do courses, or people who have like projects or want to set up projects and so on. And other things, we've like put on like lots of different events which are, you know, about like gardening or growing or like little skills sharing things, just like healing spaces for like Black and people of color to come together and connect with each other and to learn in like the city where most of us are based in London. And we've also done a lot of research and around like access to you know, food growing as a livelihood, and yeah, so that's like some of the work. And like our eventual goal is to like get some land and to set up a Black and people of color land cooperative where we're growing food or creating like space for people to rest and heal. Land reparations is the idea that like a lot of these people who hoard land, because land is very much hoarded in this country, that very few people actually can own land. And even if you own land, it's so difficult to get the planning permission to like build somewhere to live on that land, that it's just so it's so important to just like redistribute that. And like we're still living within a feudal economic system in a lot of ways, where like the same people are the ones who control land and who control the food system, and then who control like housing and all these things that have implications on our well-being. So it's very much about redistributing land, redistributing resources, and like what Land in Our Names focus is land specifically. And obviously there's other aspects of reparations, which is redistributing money, compensation, investing that into healthcare services and like learning and education. And those are all like tied to our work, but like my main focus is about land specifically because of how everything is rooted back to that. Like if you have land, you can build a school on that, for example. If you have land, you can build like facilities to support people being able to see like counselors, or to like just be able to like do therapeutic farming, or to like to grow food specifically. Like that's something that I think we all felt, especially over the pandemic, like the food shortages or certain shortages, and not just the pandemic, but also like it's tied to Brexit as well. But like how these things are precarious, and this global economic food system is actually really exploitative to poorer countries, but also the people who cannot access quality food within like Britain, how they end up losing out because of that too. And my experience growing up in a city is that I didn't feel that connection to the land, and it was only through learning about food and growing that I learned a lot more about all the important aspects of the ecosystem that like make growing food possible, from like the tiny microbes and fungi and arthropods and so on, that like are an essential part of soil life that vegetables and plants need in order to grow and flourish, and like how that's so essential, and like all the different insects and pollinators, as well as honeybees and bumblebees and hoverflies, and all the way up to like having predators that keep animals like badgers or deer in populations balanced, and like how it's all interconnected. And that's something I only was able to really access through learning how to grow food myself and being put in those situations. And a lot of people don't have access to that. And then if we're able to redistribute land and create more spaces where people can be in nature and be on the land, like how healing that is, how that helps you get out of your head and you recognize this is constant, this is ancient, this is everywhere, and it doesn't belong to anyone, it belongs to us all, and we belong to the land. And like I guess that's that's what I think. It's like compensating and redistributing land, but also like what that opportunity creates for people, and like how that can change you. It's exhausting to have like this narcissistic worldview that we are somehow superior or better or separate from the environment, when like our ancestors, our cultures that maybe were severed from because of colonialism or whatever. But like if we look to like Yoruba or like other indigenous or traditional like African spiritualities, as a Black person, like for me it's like a lot of what I'm learning is that it's about seeing yourself as part of nature, and seeing yourself as an animal, and seeing yourself as part of the ecology, and that you have an impact on your environment. So that's so much of the healing, is to like heal from this mindset that somehow you are not affected, or you cannot have an effect on the environment, or that somehow your role is to always have power over, or there's no way that this animal, this non-human animal, or this river or whatever can know more than you do, or can have more of an important role than you do. And like getting out of this westernized mindset that we are somehow separate and superior to like non-human beings. And it's just like I feel like there's a lot that we need to learn, and like moving towards like ecological ways of growing and being. Like it's not as if it's something new, but it's something that's always existed, but we've been like told to forget, or to not take it seriously, or to dismiss it. And maybe there's a way that we can draw on like certain aspects of modern Western science, as well as like indigenous practices and knowledge systems, and work and tie them together, to draw the aspects of both that are beneficial. Like I'm not saying to replace cancer treatments with like herbalism or whatever, but it's just more to see that it's not one or the other, but it's like a synthesis of both. And that's what maybe a lot of my generation and people like me who are from places like Jamaica or like other colonized places where a lot of the culture, our traditional, our ancestral cultures have been erased and replaced by the colonizers' cultures, that we have to create something new, which is about learning from everything that we have available to us. I was born in Jamaica and I came to London when I was 7, and my whole life is always having people asking me where I'm from because I have an accent, which I don't know where it is from. It's sort of like an amalgamation of different things. And yeah, and like growing up in London, like I didn't have the same access to the countryside, and when I did occasionally go on like trips with like my family, you know, I never really felt safe or welcome. A lot of the times I felt like a lot of hostility, like, and I've experienced racism and people being quite horrible to me. And I feel like this is an experience for a lot of like Black people and people of color, especially if you grow up in the countryside. I think that's like a whole other thing, that some people experience some really horrible like violent behavior, and like I think a lot of it is shaped by, you know, like how threatening your identity is perceived to some people. And that's really sad, but I think we can change that. And something Leah Penniman said is that, you know, like the violence may like this is an extreme paraphrasing, so it's not a direct quote because I'm not very good at remembering quotes, but like it's like, you know, like the violence may have happened here, but it wasn't like the land didn't harm us. Like, you know, it was the violence might have, you know, occurred on the land, especially in the US, like in the South as well. Like it might have happened there, but the land wasn't the one who did it. Like the land didn't hurt us, it was the people, like it was the systems, you know. And I think that's the other thing, is that whenever I'm in nature, and even if there's some like landowner or farmer who's maybe eyeing me weird, like I know that this tree or this field or like these butterflies or I don't know, cows, they aren't like they're not the ones like directing their hostility towards me. And like I can't control how people will react towards me. I can't control, like I can't keep modifying myself to make myself more palatable, because it doesn't matter what I do. I could be the most like inoffensive like Black person ever, but then in the end they'll someone who wants to hate me will always find a reason to hate me. But the land won't, you know. And that's how I've been healing, like in my body, like being able to be with friends who don't police the way that I act when I'm in nature, when we can like dance and play and sing and run and enjoy it, and like, you know, learn about different trees or fungi or plants or whatever. Like these are the things that help heal me, is that it's about learning about nature and learning from nature and non-human beings, and like not getting distracted by like how people treat me, because I've accepted that I'm going to experience racism anywhere I go. I experience it in London, I experience it in the countryside. And this whole like idea, I guess, also of the countryside, like I think British people have like this myth, this beautiful myth that is linked in romanticism, like the romantic movement, I guess, which is like the rural idyll, which is incredibly tied to like racist concepts of like, oh yeah, all these like white people just frolicking and smiling back before Industrial Revolution, and all these like migrants and like intermixing and stuff like that. But then that never existed. There's always been a migrant and Black presence within like rural spaces in Britain, but that history has been forgotten and hasn't really been investigated because it isn't valued, you know. Like that's the violence of the archive in a lot of ways. And when it is archived, it's like, you know, it's very much linked to the existing power schemes of the time, right? And so like you are like migrants and Black and people of color are as like deserving to be in these spaces as anyone else. And as much as like the ruling classes want to make the British countryside into like this holiday resort where they can like escape from the brutalities of the city and like exclude other people, like we also need to remind them, but also to remind ourselves that we can take this, like we are deserving to go there and to be like, me accessing this countryside is actually beneficial to non-human beings, to biodiversity, to ecological repair, to learning, to all of these things that they try and tell us, like, oh yeah, nature first, like we need to protect nature before like allowing people to access it, as if these things don't go hand in hand, you know. And I think for me, like, being in nature now is something that's really healing, and it's taken a long time. It's taken me having friends who already have that relationship because of their own privileges as being like white and English, like have, you know, held my hand and look after me and like made me feel right when I felt angry because someone has made me feel uncomfortable. And, you know, like and then also connecting with other like Black people and people of color who love being in nature, love learning about plants, want to grow food, want to live on the land, but at the moment feel like the only place that they can live is London, one of the biggest cities in the world, you know, because there's not that many places where they feel safe. Not that even living in London promises safety, but it's just that we've been told that you don't belong here. And it's like, actually, what if we just decide to go and like live here? What will happen then? And what if we do it in a way where we build up a community and like transform this space where it is revitalized with like culture and care and something exciting, you know, and that it isn't just all these like towns that are becoming like tourist traps, you know? Like, what if that happens? And like, I think that's what a lot of people are excited about, and also what I think can help us heal as well, is that, you know, the nature doesn't belong to anyone as much as they want it. Like, they want that exclusivity. They want to feel like they can exclude people. But like, if we keep like just being like, no, we're gonna be here and we're gonna take up space and we're gonna make you uncomfortable and we're gonna keep talking about it until your ears bleed.
Means necessary.
Friends, let's form a circle. We're going to sing a song to close that.